Guys, take it over.
All right. Does this work? Can you hear me okay? Should I speak louder? Good and back? Okay. Just a quick show of hands, just so we know who we're talking to. How many of you are still studying? Like, put your hand up. Are you still studying? Or is everyone working? Okay. And of you, how many of you are in communication slash graphic design? Okay. And UX or product? All right. Okay. Just so we kind of know. Okay, so I'm Seb, this is Inês, we are Descomunal. And along this conversation, these next half an hour or so, we want to answer two questions of yours. So what is a designer and what does it take to be a designer? Both, what does it take to become one and what does it take to be a practicing designer every day? And just a little intro to who we are and what is this Descomunal. It's basically us, and it's a design community. So the name in itself is design and community. It's a community by designers for designers. And what we do is, I mean, similar to this, we create events in order to create a more equal and more informed creative industry. And we want to fill the gaps that we have or that we think there are in the training and education of designers. So in order to do that, we get talks, we organize conversations, we have informal networking, dinner parties to get the community together. So this is us, alongside Adriano and Luisa, who are also helping us with the project, and they're recently joined. And these are the kind of stuff that we've been doing actually in this exact same room. So this is awesome to be on the other side now.
We're home.
We're home. So we've been doing events both in Lisbon and Porto for 1.5 to 2 years. We've had this Nova Fornada, and it's awesome to have Joana here hosting like the best up-and-coming designers in Portugal. And we've been doing a bunch of stuff. So how we structured this conversation, also feel free to ask questions. We left some room at the end of the conversation to have questions from you, but if you have any, just shoot them out. How we kind of structured this, we kind of took our own learnings from working designers, as well as like these 2 years of building this community, and we kind of structured all the learnings in a kind of a timeline of chapters that are kind of like our food for thought. So the chapter 1 is kind of the importance of a community, and this is what we learned in an event that we did called Frequently Asked Questions, where we directed the questions to you and had you ask mainly what were your burning questions about becoming a designer.
Yeah.
Good?
Yeah, it just, there's a lot of background noise. I don't know why.
Okay. So I think the question number 1 that we get most, even I do mentoring I've been mentoring for quite a bit, is people are kind of looking for answers and what's the best way to become successful at a design career. And there's really no answer to this. So yeah, you can just breathe in, because we're all clueless. We're all trying to figure out what we want to do and how we want to do it. And this is a good and bad thing, but there's no formula to a design career. I mean, that's where we at least found out. There's no real formula. If you're maybe a lawyer, you get into a structure and you climb up the hierarchy and you climb up the ladder. If you're a designer, there's so many things that you can choose from, and you can create your path as you want. And that's a huge opportunity. It's also a bit scary at points, but you can become a designer that's freelancer. You can be a really niche designer. You can go into a structure, and we'll talk about this in a bit. But I think this is really exciting for a designer, that you can also be creative in how you craft your career. This is when you start going into the industry, and even when you're applying to jobs. I think it's really helpful, and we've used this in the past, going on Glassdoor. I don't know if you know Glassdoor, but it's a really cool website that you can look at companies and look where their employees are getting paid, and if the company is good, is an interesting company and it's not toxic. So it's really helpful. And this is also here to urge everyone to use Glassdoor, because the more people use it, the better and more informed decisions we can all make. And going now into numbers, this is a study that Chris from How and How Studio shared with us in a talk that he did with us a while back. And I think we don't talk about this enough. We don't actually share these numbers enough amongst ourselves. And I think this is really cool. This is a survey by a recruitment company based in UK. So of course, these are pound figures and they're from the UK. But I think this is really helpful to kind of set your value, especially as a freelancer, because there's not really much conversation about what you should charge as a freelancer. So I think this is a really good starting point, even if you have to kind of tailor the numbers to what your country of operation is. But this is really helpful, and actually, this is a table that I really use frequently to set my numbers and my figures. And then, again, onto budgets and more on the freelance kind of side of things. There's no such thing as a typical budget. We get asked a lot of times, what should I charge for this client? What should I charge for this project? And it can impact, like so many things can impact your budget. So your project comes in, the difficulty of the project is something that can really bump up your budget or not. The client size, if it's like a local coffee shop that you're designing to, it might be a smaller budget than like a huge corporation, a multinational corporation. Also urgency, if the client needs the work in 1 week, you can also like, yeah, I'm gonna charge you extra for that. Interest, in the past, both me and Inês have taken clients that maybe I've done work for like bands and everything. I charge very little just because I want that on my portfolio and I think it's cool.
We still do that.
And we still do that. Yeah. Then workload and location, and here Inês and I differ on this opinion. I like to charge the same whether I'm working for Southern Europe or USA.
I charge different things depending on the country I'm working with.
So this is a controversial topic.
So I think there's no formula here, and here it's where we can see that we're both speaking here, and we differ in this opinion. Yeah. And we manage seeing different ways.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we're putting all this, but it really is not a formula. It's just food for thought that we kind of have gathered along the years. Then obviously multiplied by your year's experience and your team size. Of course, if you're just one, you charge one thing. Then if it's 2 or 3 people, okay. Then going back to when we started out, again, no formula here, but we found that it's really cool to be with other people when you're starting out. So first job, second job, we think it's cool to be, oh, by the way, all these images are generated on Midjourney, and it will make sense in a bit. And I try to be as obvious with the prompts as I could, so it's as stock photo generated by AI as possible. So this is what AI thinks a design studio looks like. So being with people is cool. Going into structure, whether it's a design studio or a company or whatever, and being able to learn with other people is really helpful when you're starting out, because maybe you have a creative director or a boss above you that will help you kind of shape your work and kind of help you get better at decision making. So we think it's cool. And on the opposite side, starting out alone, going freelance full-time when you're just new to the industry, it can be good for some people. I think it's the hardest path, but it can really benefit some people. But yeah, it is the hardest path because you really have no one, or it's more difficult to have people to use as sounding boards. And you can also do a little freelance on the side. Yeah.
This was a discussion last night at 11 p.m.
Yeah, we were kind of fearful on sharing this. So this is you.
Yeah. So taking from where Seb was going to, with being alone is the hardest path, or being with other creatives might be really beneficial for you. We had an event called What's Your Future, where we had four speakers. We are going to split them into 3 categories now. That showed us like the kind of paths you can take when you're a creative. Of course, I know you're basically all UX designers, and it's a bit different for us graphic designers, but I think we can all share the same fears and advantages when we look at our options. The most common path, I think, is a design studio and design agency, which also differs a lot depending on the city. I'm from Porto, Seb is from Lisbon. I live in Lisbon, we talk in Porto. And when we were looking for agencies in Porto, we basically couldn't find any, at least any as big as in Lisbon. And when we are looking for niche studios in Lisbon, we basically couldn't find any. So it's just really interesting to see how a city can also shape its creative industry. And of course, there are a lot of great benefits to work in a design studio and a design agency. You can brainstorm and learn a lot from other creatives, collaborate with other designers. You have a steady income, and you have the opportunity to work in huge projects, for example, say with FIFA and stuff like that, which I didn't do because I never worked in a huge agency like that. And it's a pity, like I would like to sometimes. Also, the cons are you are working usually in a fast-paced environment because they clearly don't hire enough people and designers. You're working long hours and possibly weekends, and the salaries and the career progression are not that great. At least not as great as you thought when you left the university. Then you can be an in-house designer, which I was for 2 years. And I can tell you it can be really monotonous. And you have really strict guidelines. You're not creating anything new from scratch. You're working with accountants and directors of, I don't know how many sectors. They are all the directors somehow. But you have really like steady income. You have great benefits. If I stay there for a while, I could have like a car. I had health insurance and all this great stuff that they don't give you in design agencies, usually at least. And then, yeah, you have the, I think, aspiring career from everyone in university is to be a freelance and independent designer. You always think about how you can curate your designs, you can curate your own clients, you can manage your time and be completely fulfilled. That is in part true, but you also have to deal with instability, not only time, but money. And you're going to wear multiple hats. We're going to show you some of those in a minute. And the time management, you thought it was a pro, it can actually be a huge con. And I'm a huge example of that. So the chapter 3 is based on an event we did with a psychologist, and it's focused on people who are actually trying to be independent and a freelancer. We separate being independent and freelancer because independent designers, we believe, are people who have their own clients. You can be both, for example. I'm both. I have my own clients, but then I freelance for a company 4 days a week, 4 afternoons a week. So I'm basically a part of that company, only just an outsource and a part-time. But they struggle with the same questions. When you believe you're an independent designer, but actually are all these things. And you're trying to manage being the salesperson and updating your portfolio, which you never do, and being the accountant, knowing how to do your finances and send invoices to clients, manage your projects, manage your deadlines, be your own HR department, which usually are the worst. And then actually the time to be a designer is not that much. So these are the struggles. And for that reason, we decided to give you some tips, like a mini help kit, where we sort out Patricia. She's an accountant specialized in creative freelancers. That's great for graphic designer and also UX designers and product designers. Cia Rocha Silva is an incredible designer, and she does workshops and she has like online workshops. You can just buy the workshop and do whenever you want for your finances. And also she has some newsletters that can keep you afloat with the deadlines for Segurança Social and for IRS and stuff like that. So she always keeps you updated to what are your obligations. Then we have Doutora Maria Miguel. She's Maria Miguel. She's a very cool psychologist, and she's specialized in
anxiety.
Well, okay, we can say that. She talked to us about anxiety, the imposter syndrome, burnout, and other issues that I think are very common in our creative industry. And it was amazing because after her talk with Descomunal, we had someone come to us and say, okay, this is great. Now we know how to deal with, or we have some tips how to deal with burnout and imposter syndrome. But then I go home and I open my Instagram and everyone has this beautiful work and is working with amazing projects, and I'm not, and I just feel pressured, and I don't see, like, he was just speeding up like questions and anxiety after the talk. So I realized, okay, maybe we need to do more. Yeah, so imposter syndrome, burnout, anxiety, plus social media, then you get chaos. And I think that's where we got to our fourth chapter, which was our last talk with Andre Cruz, which basically was we decided to call a great designer with great work, with amazing portfolio on Instagram, Behance, and the website. And we just asked him, like, can you show us what nobody sees and what pays the bills and things that you are kind of embarrassed to talk about? Because I think everyone does this kind of work and it's there and nobody shows. So when you're looking at other people's Instagram feeds, which are beautiful, they usually don't represent exactly the amount of work that actually pays your bills. So going back to us, this is me. I'm Inês. I'm a graphic designer. I started in Australia. That was my first year as a designer. I was working in a studio slash agency. It's there. The difference there, it's different. Yeah. And in Portugal, I work mainly with the cultural sector, and I'm focused in identity and branding. And I was also in an in-house company, Amorim Luxury Group, for 2 years. So I basically was in the 3 different paths. And now I'm an independent graphic designer, which comes with all the things that I mentioned before. But after all this amazing work and amazing clients, this is something that I do as well. And I'm not very proud of it. This is like a flyer, which you can hang in a door. I don't know why. But like, this is a great client of mine, is Avenida da Liberdade. I do MUPIs in the city for them, which is great. But then I also have to do stuff like this, which is a flyer for 6th and Avenida da Liberdade. It is not fun. I don't think anyone besides you and Lisbon are going to be seeing this ever again. This is not supposed to leave my drive, but it pays bills and it keeps my clients happy. And sometimes that's also very important. This is another funny story. So I don't know if you heard of Kathleen Megan Folwig. This is her. She is one of the most famous murderers of Australia. And she's a mother who killed her 4 children before they turned 1. And she pleads completely innocent, and she was accused of being a killer. And she kept every single day of her life in a journal for 10 years. So it's a weird story where you can actually read the mind of a killer while you see the crimes happening. She wasn't arrested until a lot of years after their kids died, because doctors always felt that it was like morte súbita for children, sudden death, and they could never prove how she killed them. So I was commissioned when I was in Sydney to design the report for the government of her convictions. It was a 500-page report, and I end up like reading the whole thing like it was literature for me, because it was a transcript of all her diaries. And then suddenly you think, like, I'm a graphic designer and I spent the last 3 months just doing this boring design for this crazy story. And yeah, sometimes your work is just also about this weird stuff. These are some massages in London. Aftercare advice. Please rate us in Trustpilot, and this really beautiful roll-up that nobody wants to see. And this is like the first intervention team for a luxury hotel that has a lot of golf camps and other camps, and they need people to intervene somehow. And I'm doing this, which is not fun at all. And of course, nobody is going to see this ever again. So that was me.
Okay. I don't know if there's feedback happening.
It's supposed to be have audio?
Não. It's just because
Ok.
estou a ouvir o feedback aqui no canal.
Não, mas não consigo tirar isso mesmo deste microfone.
All right. Basically, the whole concept of this conversation that we're sharing with you here is sharing is caring. So that's why we're also sharing all of this that you should not be able to see, whether it's budgets or our own very shameful work. So all of this is kind of to open the conversation about we shouldn't be as closed as designers that we are. And the whole concept of Descomunal, by the way, is about opening up conversations. So that's also what we wanted to do here. So what's happening in the background is my work. So we're doing introductions at the end, which is weird. My name is Seb and Inês. I'm half Portuguese, half Spanish. I've been working in design agencies and advertising agencies in Lisbon and Paris. You'll see some work from both. And recently I was creative director at Kitsch, which is a startup. So also I've done design studios in-house, and now I'm independent designer, so I'm working on my own clients. And what I like to do, as you can see, is I like bold, I like loud, I like typography, I like colors. And especially if I get to work with sports and music industries is what I like best. I've done some interesting, this is all work for Kitsch. I've done like the FIFA World Cup work, all that kind of stuff. It's cool. But then I've been commissioned to do, okay, AI generated shit like this, where I was asked to create some sort of collaboration between Deadpool and Burberry. So, oh, sorry, this is kind of the stuff that I was commissioned to do not that long ago. So this pays the bills, so it's awesome. And like a collaboration between Barbie and Star Wars. Again, no idea why would anyone need this, but yeah, it is here, and we do this kind of stuff. And also I've done like Freeport, so really controversial outlet in Lisbon that was connected to a bunch of corruption and everything. I've done flyers for like their promotions, and this was a whole collection, and the client was really a pain because they were really discussing if it should be wood or a pomegranate or a leaf or whatever. So this was a tough job, and it ends up looking like this, but it was tough to get here. Then yeah, catalog for merchandise, super boring. This is way back. This is when I started out. This is the best job I've ever done. My boss, his son, had drawn this logo for his diary, and he was like, "Can you make a logo out of this?" I was like, "Sure, let's do it." So yeah, this is a job that I did. I got paid for this. This is bittersweet because this is a really cool project. And it was a really cool project starting out. I actually did the logo. I did the whole concept for the thing. And then I think I took like 2 weeks of vacation. When I came back, it all kind of got blown away. And we only did this like really terrible photography, like photo shoot. And a whole thing that was based in illustration. It was really cool, kind of ended up looking like this. And sometimes things get out of hand, and you have to kind of deal with it and yeah, keep going. So then I had to kind of look at this and kind of make the most of it. But yeah, it was tough. And then we end in the best thing. I did a catalog for tractors in Paris. So I was in a beautiful building. The agency was in a beautiful building of this really famous composer. And then they come in and like, oh, there's farmers in France and they need a catalog for their tractors. And this is an actual job. I did this. So it's cool that also shitty design is cool. And no shame in this. All right. So speaking about shame, a shameless plug. Again, Joanna, you're being summoned again. This will play eventually. So we're doing an open call. We're kind of looking for the best designers in Portugal, whether it be UX, whether it be graphic, whether it be product, communication, editorial, doesn't really matter. If you're new to the industry, when I mean new, like 2 years in, 3 years in tops, or just coming out of university, we want to see your work. We want to broadcast you and put you on a stage and have you introduce yourself to the world. So go on Instagram. There's a link there. You can just submit your work, really easy. We'd love to see what you got. Yeah, this is a shameless plug. And that's it for us. So please, if you have questions, feel free. And thank you.
Any questions? I have a question. What type of work do you put on the portfolio? Do you put like they're not shameful, they're kind of amazing, and it's like it's work, and it's really good. No, I mean, like this is how it works. What do you put in a portfolio?
Maybe just repeat the question so that they hear it.
So the question was, what kind of work do you actually put in your portfolio? I try to put work that will give me clients that I like to work with more and more. So it's a tricky compromise between work that sometimes you're not super proud. Like just yesterday, I was showing Inês a client that I think is really shitty work, but would help me get other clients because the brand is huge. So I try to use either the work is not so good, but the name is good. So just by the name, it should be there. Or then it's like maybe a smaller thing, but the work is really good and I'm really proud of it. So I think that's my.
So I always say that my best paying clients are outside from Portugal, but they never get to my portfolio. And my Portuguese clients, they have the lowest budgets, opposed to Seb, but they always have my heart and my portfolio. So basically, I tend to put online when I have the time to do it, basically because it's hard to manage everything at the same time. I tend to put designs that I feel that will get me other clients, just like Seb, that are harder to get usually, because I always get the lawyers and the finances and the real estate and the hotels and the restaurants. They always show up, but then the art galleries and the music festivals and the movie, like I'm doing a documentary for RTP2, like these kind of projects, these are harder to get because they belong to a niche. And if you don't put yourself out there, then people won't know that you do those things. And if you put too much of a lawyer, of a finance, then RTP2 won't take you seriously anymore. So not seriously, they feel you are working towards another sector. So I think for me, the portfolio is really trying to balance what kind of image I want to put out there. And it does really not represent the kind of work that we do every day. And I think that's the main idea we wanted to transmit today, is that we do a lot of things that are not online, good and bad.
Just one thing that I would like to add. Also portfolios, again, there's no formula to this, but some people really like to have niche portfolios that have like a very specific direction and shows one type of work. I know a bunch of people that are really trying to get only one type of work, and they want to get known for a particular style, so they only put that in there. I think both of us try to be a bit more versatile, so we both try to put some more maybe commercial work, maybe some more artistic, so a balance. But yeah, there's no right or wrong way for this. Yes.
I have a question about, there is no formula, but maybe you can give advice for those people who only doing transition in European market, and I never worked there before, but I would like to be as a designer in house. Now I have freelance work, but I would like to make that transition, and maybe you can make some advice.
So, okay, the question for Lisbon is advice for someone that's new either to the European market or transitioning careers. You're in-house designer, you want to be a freelancer?
No.
Okay, freelancer wants to go in-house. I think my main advice, and this is my advice that I always give, is the power of networking. So basically the power of talking to people. It's cool that we're talking about portfolio and showing your work, and it's really cool to have your work put on your website and it's just there and it kind of works for itself. So if people want to find you, it's easy and they just can go there. But then is the hard thing about actually meeting people, talking to people, finding who the recruitment manager is for that position, finding maybe peers, so people at your level that are working in the companies that you're interested in, and kind of stalking them on LinkedIn and chatting with them. I do that all the time.
You're super the LinkedIn designer. LinkedIn doesn't work for me.
But I also do that on Instagram. So like just chatting to people, whether at your level, slightly above, whether it be on LinkedIn or Instagram or on the street or events like this, really helps to eventually build a solid network that will eventually help you out in getting your next job and your next job and your next job. So for me, networking is the best thing. And P.S., I'm really introverted, or started out as introverted, and I really struggled with getting out there and chatting to people.
Please.
It's true. Now it doesn't seem like it, but a while ago it was like that, and I really struggled to just being here and hosting Descomunal and being at these talks. For a long time, it was a really real struggle for me. So we all can relate with, should I just chat with this person on LinkedIn, or should I just come up to this speaker at this conference? Maybe I'm kind of scared. What should I say? Everyone is in the same position or has been, so people are really welcoming. At least I found it. So.
And be online. I think that's nowadays it's very important. It's very stressful as well because you feel that you're never doing enough posts, enough stories, and they're not well enough designed, and there's this huge pressure. I'm not a LinkedIn designer, I'm more of an Instagram designer. It has to be this way, but you choose your niche, actually. Like you can be an email designer and you just email a lot of studios and show your work and send a PDF. That can work too. But keep yourself and your portfolio updated. That's a really big rule that I think nobody follows, and not even people who are actually giving advice. So keep your portfolio updated and stay online. The channel is up to you, but you have to be there. And especially now, for example, I found your question really interesting because you were not asking to make the transition to Portugal, you were asking to Europe. So we're not talking about like one specific market anymore. We're talking to the world sometimes. So that online portfolio can give you that visibility. And after COVID, especially, it was huge, the difference where we are not working for us anymore and for Portugal, and that adaptability to be able to communicate to the whole world, and digital and online is very important and relevant.
Last question?
Maybe ask if someone in Lisbon has questions.
Oh yeah, hey Lisbon, someone has any questions? So let me see questions.
We're having issues with connectivity. Let's see.
So, might need to be repeated.
Yeah.
Yeah, my question was, like shitty work that keeps the lights off. But any of the work that you find personally inspirational, did any of the clients who normally do that work for, were they inspired by that work and wanted to change and start like in that negotiation and manage to influence their internal?
Let's see if they...
So basically the question is, and correct me if I'm wrong, if the shitty work that you did pay off to eventually get clients that you, or the best work that you might wanted to do, something like that?
As in, the good work that you, the work that you sort of stand behind, did that ever influence to like a change?
Maybe that's to
Yeah.
Sorry. The work that you did paid off. Your basically the good work that you got out of it. Maybe just.
We'll now do the question better because I couldn't explain that well. Here, sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so for any of the work that you're really proud of, did you ever manage to convince clients who normally be doing the boring work to start to change their design language? And if so, could you talk a little bit about how you manage to influence them. Because a lot of times designers present that work, and then when they get in and they're attracted by that, but then they struggle to make those changes internally. Was there ever an instance where you managed to influence that?
You guys managed to get that? I think the subtitles were okay, but.
So let me check if I understood your question. So the first thing you asked is if the shitty work. I don't feel very comfortable calling it shitty. The work of the behind the scenes paid off, but I think that was the first part of the question. And I think the second part of your question, if I'm not mistaken, is that we're able to, when we are actually dealing with these kinds of work, if we're actually able to make it the best we can and actually discuss with the client to make it better. And is that it? Can I see your hand like that, if it is, or like that? Yeah, good. Okay. So to the first question, when you're asking if it paid off, it's like you're mentioning it's something of the past, which is not. Like the flyer from 6 was 2 months ago. So I think it just happens in a continuum. It's a parallel work. It does pay off because that client specifically is the client that allows me to have one MUPI. How do you say MUPI? It's MUPI. Billboard in Lisbon, in the whole main avenues, almost every month. So that's really thrilling for me. It's one of the things I love the most, is to ride my motorbike and see my work on the streets. And then I have to do the flyer because it comes with the job. And I'm okay with that, because the flyer, that nobody looks at it. Only people who hang flyers on doors, which I still don't know who they are. Probably people who rent cars. Yes, of course. And then
I thought it was obvious.
so it wasn't. And then the billboard is there for everyone to see, and that part of the project I'm really excited about, and it's way more beautiful. I should have brought that. Way more beautiful than the flyer, and way more design and more conceptual. So the clients do have that sensibility, and they allow me to be creative. They just know that for a specific kind of material, like a flyer to go on a 6th, I don't know, pop-up or store, they need to be really specific. They have to have a huge QR code and those rules, and they have to be boring. So it pays off because it allows you to do other stuff. That massage thing I did for London, it was my getaway door to have a huge amount of English clients that are now very useful for me. So, and I love them very much. So I think it's always a door to something else. I mean, not always, it can be. And the opportunity to be a door for something else, it's great. And sometimes it pays off, and sometimes it was just shitty work, again, that stays in your behind the scenes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it does pay off. Not only, again, it's not shitty, like we all do it. It's okay. Like, let's normalize this. But it does pay off because it teaches you a bunch of stuff. So maybe projects that don't go your way teach you resilience, and teaches you to kind of navigate the many layers and the many phases of a design process. So everything will help you becoming a better designer. It will help you make more informed decisions. It will help you maybe tailor your specific style to a different audience that maybe you're not as used to, and maybe that will help you kind of become a better and more rounded designer. So I think every project, for a long time I thought I only want to do good work, and I only want to do work that makes me proud. But sometimes the work that's tough and it's difficult and it's not your style and not your specific interest is the one that teaches you the most about yourself, about a designer, and even a person sometimes. So, okay, a quick example. I did a whole brand book that was about like 200 pages for like a huge global company. It was one of the hardest challenges that I've ever done. It was like 9 months, almost nonstop of doing this. It was probably the hardest job I've ever done. And in the end, it taught me so much about resilience, about not giving up, and always like fighting for the best decision at every point. And it was like every week that you had to fight for like a comma or a dot or a pixel or a button or whatever it might be. So that teaches you a lot, even like the hard jobs and the ones that you're not super proud of.
Does that answer the
Does
question?
that answer your question? Please, sure. Awesome.
Yes, you.
Maybe one last question, or are we good on Lisbon?
Yes, I think we're good, right?
I have.
Okay, we have a question. Let me just ask the people.
Hi. I was wondering about networking. How high would you rank it in a career as a design career? And if you have any advice, tips, how do you network? What's your playbook on that? Thank you.
All right, no pressure on this. I think networking comes hand in hand with having a good portfolio, so having good work that people can see. So for me, it's 50-50. Having good work is the 50% of work that you should put in, and then the other 50 is networking, or like 60-40 or something. How I usually network? Well, having a community like Descomunal really helps because we're kind of obligated to meet people, and that's really good.
You can join us anytime.
And you can join us anytime. We'll really make an effort to welcome you, so please introduce yourselves and at the next event. But yeah, like I said, every week I try to at least have 1 or 2 messages on LinkedIn or Instagram, and I try to kind of stalk someone that I'm interested in and kind of just chat with them. Sometimes it's just for a quick chat and let's jump on a video chat or something and let's talk and meet. Sometimes if it's someone more senior, I'll ask for a portfolio review. I've done that like twice this week, last week, sorry. So whether it depends on the person, it depends on who I'm speaking to, but I like to chat and kind of engage with other people to ask for different things, whether it be maybe advice from them, maybe a portfolio review, maybe a tip, maybe a referral for a job that I like, maybe they've worked with a client that I really would like to work, and I try to find out how they got that client so I can get that client as well. And then I'm really shameless now in events like this, that I just start speaking to everyone else, and I make a point to kind of meet most of everyone that's at the event. And I kind of have to overcome my fear, and I just kind of take the plunge and like jump in the pool before I think too deep about it, because if I think too deep about it, I won't chat with anyone. So this is how I kind of do it.
I would say you just follow Descomunal, and we will have events in Porto, in Lisbon, but also Descomunal is not the only place where you can meet other designers and get to know other designers. So I'm not introverted. I'm just very lazy and workaholic. So I stay at home basically all week, don't speak with anyone, and I go crazy on weekends. But for that reason, I make an effort to go to talks and go to openings and be present at those events, and that's where you meet people that are actually your peers. And if you follow us on Instagram, then you'll be able to see job opportunities, more graphic design focused, but sometimes we also share UX and UI. And we have informal dinners where you can meet other peers. We have events and talks in both cities. So I think that's a good way to start and to meet people. And then suddenly you're just collaborating with a client, you're sharing clients with other designers. I share a lot of my clients with a lot of designers that I know, and the more that I know, the more I can share. And I hope sometimes people do the same with me, and that's great, because sometimes our workload is not the same, and that is fantastic. And that's thank you.